All right, so we have just one topic left tonight, but it's kind of a big one. And we can kind of just play it by ear on how much we actually want to cover with this. But the Game Awards has released the nominees for this year. And a couple of small things I want to note. First of all, the only thing that Concord got nominated for was for accessibility stuff. It's like, okay, it didn't get any other nominations, which is wonderful. And Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League got 0 nominations for any topic or any category whatsoever. But the big thing here, I mean, of course, there's plenty of arguments about different categories and how some games really don't fit in those categories. You know, plenty of reasons to debate various aspects of the categories and the nominations. But the big thing here is the Game of the Year nomination. So the Game of the Year nominations, we have Astrobot, not surprising, Balatro, which is an indie roguelike poker game that has gotten a lot of praise. Black Myth Wukong, of course, not surprising there. Elden Ring Shadow of the Erd Tree, which is DLC, requires that you have Elden Ring in order to play. Then Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Metaphor ReFantazio. Now, one final note I want to say before get your thoughts on this is for anyone who's thinking, oh, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is a remake, is like, no, it's really not. Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth are essentially sequels to Final Fantasy VII. Not going to get into the story aspects of that because, of course, all this is technically theoretical unless they confirm something in Rebirth, but I haven't played it yet, so I don't know for sure. Regardless, the big thing that people are taking issue with above all else is the fact that a DLC made it into the Game of the Year discussion. And it's not because of the length of the DLC, the amount of content, anything like that, but because of how it opens the door and also at the same time kind of betrays previous DLCs that have come out that have been equally large in the past. Like last year, of course, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Future Redeemed, which was like a 30 to 40 hour game on its own and was amazing, by the way. First of all, are there any other categories you want to cover before we talk about Game of the Year, or do you just want to talk about Game of the Year?
Maybe one thing I'll have at the end, but I also want to say that just another thing. From what I could tell, also, it does not seem like Dragon Age Veilguard won any awards, or was nominated for any awards either.
Right.
So,
That's right.
That's another, I would say, surprise added to our list of zeros. But, yeah, I mean, whichever way you want to handle it is fine with me.
All right, well, let's just let's talk about Game of the Year, but then we can follow up with any other categories we want to talk about after that. So, what are your thoughts on all of this, particularly Elden Ring Shadow of the Erd Tree being included?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think that there are definitely titles here that aren't surprising, like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Metaphor ReFantazio, Astrobot, Black Myth Wukong. Those definitely, I would say, are something you would expect to see nominated. I'm a bit surprised by Balatro. I've heard that the game's good, but I'm not a card player type of person. I mean, outside of maybe like Solitaire. So I'm surprised to see it here, but I mean, it could be something like It Takes Two. I mean, It Takes Two definitely was a surprise when it won. Not only nominated, but won Game of the Year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this could be another situation where something like that happens. But I'm partially not surprised about Elden Ring because of the fact that either was the day before or just the day before, I think it was Jeff Keighley or the Game Awards, like as an entity, put out some statement about, by the way, we're changing how the Game Awards works. Now we're gonna allow DLC to be included. It's like, you're only putting that out there so people are not, well, they're gonna be upset. But so you could say, we told you what's gonna happen about Elden Ring being nominated because, yeah. I mean, I could understand. I could understand if you had a category, like if you had best DLC, or even if you had because they have a category. What's it called? Best ongoing game, or something like that.
Right.
They could have done that for Elden Ring. Like, I really don't think that. I don't think DLCs or expansions should be considered as part of a nomination. And I would also include stuff like, I would also include remasters. So like if a game got remastered, like for example, say Dark Souls 3 was remastered, I would say that it should not be nominated for Game of the Year, just because of the fact that it is essentially the same game from 2016. And sure, it didn't win that year, but you know what? 2016 actually had a lot of great games that year. So like I can't be upset over the fact that it didn't win during that year. But if it was nominated again for, like, if it came out and was nominated, I would be sort of against that because of the fact that it's the same game, but just like with a little bit of paint added to it. So it's core 2016. Now, do I think that Dark Souls 3 is a great game? Yes, I think it's phenomenal, but it shouldn't be nominated again for Game of the Year. Like I said, unless it was like put in a special category, then maybe, but not like this. And so that's sort of like the same thing with, Elden Ring. Like, sure, it's technically a different game and you probably get a different experience out of it because, you know, there's probably different mechanics, probably different elements added, but it's still part of the base game that came out before. So I don't think there's any reason as to why it should be added here for Game of the Year. It's not even a full game, it's DLC. And sure, it might be large, but you still require the base game to access it, like you said. Now, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, I don't take too much stock in games in the Game Awards. You know, I mean, it's great to see games, you know, acknowledged, but I don't personally take stock in them. But I just think it's kind of silly that it's added here. You know, I feel like if you added in other games that came out this year, like if you put in like, I mean, personally, I'm kind of surprised that like Helldivers 2 wasn't nominated in here, because I, you know, especially earlier this year, I would have been certain that game would have been nominated for Game of the Year.
Yeah.
So I'm actually quite a bit surprised that it wasn't nominated, but yeah, it's definitely weird. But I mean, people are definitely upset about this, but you know, I guess in this case, you know, just don't take the Game Awards so seriously, you know?
Right.
But it's definitely interesting. I'll say that. But I might have some more stuff that pop into my head later on, but that's all I have to say about this for right now.
So I definitely am of the opinion that there should be a separate category and that it shouldn't be in Game of the Year. I think that it would make a lot more sense to have, like, number one, that they need to have a remake/remaster category, which I don't think that like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth fits into that category because it's sort of a remake, but it's not really, because it's a totally different take on the story and just a completely different game. It's like a brand new, completely different game from the original. But having a remake, remaster category and then having a DLC/expansion category, I think they need to have those kind of categories for those separate things in order to make this more reasonable because, I mean, as it is, the fact that the DLC never is like it requires the base game, it requires progression. It's not like you can just. It's not like it's a separate line item within the game that like it's a standalone thing that you access within the game. Because, like, for example, Future Redeemed on Xenoblade Chronicles 3, as well as like Future Connected and Torn of the Golden Country on the other Xenoblade games, they're standalone expansions that they do require the base game to have, but they're accessed separately through the menu. You don't carry over anything that you had in the main game. You don't have to do anything in the main game. You can just go straight into that if you want to. But even those, I would still say they should be in their own separate category. This one, you have to actually, I mean, like, I don't know exactly how much progression you have to have in order to access Shadow of the Erdtree, but you do have to have some progression. You have to beat a certain boss in order to be able to access it and that sort of thing. And yeah, in terms of the amount of content, like, I have no doubt that it has plenty of content, probably longer than a lot of other games, but it doesn't change the fact that this is not its own game. It is not something that should be in this category. No matter how amazing it is, it doesn't belong in this category. It needs to have its own separate category. Same thing with remakes and remasters. They need their own separate category. Because I do think it would be good to be able to acknowledge how good some of these things are. But I also think it's important to make sure that you keep things separated in such a way that they can stand out on their own and it doesn't clutter what otherwise could be, other great games being recognized. Because there are a variety of different games that came out this year that could be in this category in place of Shadow of the Erdtree. And I mean, like, I think that the variety here is really good apart from that. That's just a problem because of the fact that it's not a full game itself, regardless of how long it is. And so this should not be in this category. I think the rest of the picks are great. There are a variety of other options they could throw in order to fill out that sixth slot. They could do something like Helldivers 2, or they could do, there's some other ones that I'm forgetting off the top of my head what they are. But anyway, people who've actually played a lot of the new releases this year, there's lots of things that could fit better in that category. But yeah, I wish that they would do those two separate categories, especially because, like, remakes and remasters, you have Persona 3 Reload that came out this year. It is a huge improvement over the original game, and it's completely reworked. It looks better. They redid the soundtrack. They have a ton of quality of life improvements. It's not just like a layer on top of the old game. It's basically a brand new version of the game, and it's incredible. Or, they have Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance, where you have essentially a second full campaign that's actually longer than Shadow of the Erdtree, is largely completely new content. And when you buy it, it includes the original story as well. And you can do either one within this one version of the game. But anyway, I digress. That is about all I have to say on this topic. I think the rest of the nominees are all deserving in their own right. Personally, if I was going to pick something just based on what I've played, it would probably be Metaphor, but I've only played a little bit of Metaphor. And Rebirth, I really want to play it, but it's not on PC yet. And I just have a feeling Metaphor is probably going to be more of a game of the year. Would be more of a game of the year for me anyway, if I had the opportunity to play it without having to spend $70+ on it. But any other thoughts on that, or do you want to talk about some of the other categories?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all I have to say in that particular category. Now, one question I actually did have when I was looking through the categories before, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but have they always had two separate categories as action and action adventure? Or is this new?
I'm not sure.
Because I was very confused when I saw that when I was looking at the categories.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Action game and action adventure. They probably have. But I honestly don't know. Did you have any other ones you wanted to talk about?
Maybe just one, and partially because I thought this was going to be very interesting because it's going to be sort of a fanboy, a very fanboyish type of choice for this one, and this was for the most anticipated game. And two games that are part of that list are Death Stranding 2 on the beach and Metroid Prime 4. So, I thought that was very interesting to me because, I think people who have been listening to the podcast long enough know where we both stand. So, I just thought that was very interesting here. You've got the Metroid fanboy and the Kojima fanboy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, looking at those, I want to be excited for Ghost of Yote, but I'm just so worried that it's going to be super preachy and girl powery to the point where like it's just completely unrealistic and just ruins the legacy of Sucker Punch. Because I guess it won't ruin their legacy, but it would basically sour me for playing any of their future games if they don't get this one right. If they still knock it out of the park like they have with every other game, then I will continue to sing their praises because I love Sucker Punch, but I'm just super concerned about it. Obviously Death Stranding 2 I'm super duper excited about. I mean, that's as long as if it comes to PC the same day, well, regardless of when it comes to PC, it's going to be a day one purchase for me. Without question. I will buy the biggest, baddest version of the game. Probably not like a physical collector's edition because although I like... I'm not weirded out by the BB anymore like I was before I played the game. I actually love the BB. The BB's great in the game. But even though that's the case, it's still just like... I don't need the physical collectibles. And since I'd be getting it on PC anyway, I wouldn't be able to get a disc version. So it's like, there wouldn't be much point. But I'll definitely go for the digital deluxe version for sure. And look forward to that. And then Metroid Prime 4, like I'm very excited about it. But I also kind of know what to expect with that. And it's like just a known quantity. I would say it's pretty much guaranteed to be good. It would be hard for them to mess it up because even Metroid Prime 3, which was probably may have been my least favorite of the three. I'm not sure if that one or the 2 is my least favorite, but like and Metroid Prime 3 was still great. Metroid Prime 2, for all the things I didn't like about it, it was still a great game. I would happily buy it again. So Prime 4, like I expect it to be great. And Grand Theft Auto 6, I don't care about at all. Monster Hunter Wilds, if I didn't have so many Monster Hunter games that I barely touched, I might be interested in this. But between that and knowing how poorly optimized it is, I'm not sure if I'm going to be interested in this one at all. At least right now, I'm not. So. One thing I do also want to bring up is the soundtracks category. Let me find specifically here. Best score and music. Okay, so the fact that we have both Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Metaphor ReFantazio in there, it's like I know both are going to have phenomenal soundtracks. I mean, Metaphor, I've only, listened to part of it. But Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I know, is going to have a phenomenal soundtrack because Remake had a phenomenal soundtrack. And, I mean, Remake, in addition to all of the new versions of old songs, it also had a bunch of original music that was really, really, really good. And Metaphor, of course, I mean, Atlas, as far as I'm concerned, they're pretty much the most consistent when it comes to great soundtracks. Like, especially the Persona games have all been amazing. Shin Megami Tensei games have been amazing. So, man, I'm looking forward to eventually playing both of those games. And I'm sure the soundtracks in the other games are good too, but I can't imagine for a second that any of them are going to be as good as Final Fantasy VII Rebirth or Metaphor. And I hope that one of those two wins. So that's all I got, though. Lots of different categories, some good nominations here and there, but I am glad that both Metaphor and FF7 Rebirth got a bunch of nominations in various categories. Because I know that I'm going to love both of those games. So.
Now, one thing that I actually was a bit surprised about, and I'm a little confused, I guess you could say, is it's, I guess, sort of the best ongoing, also the best, what was it? It's best ongoing and best community or something like that. Best community support, which was because of No Man's Sky. Now, I'm pretty certain that I thought I saw that the game has been getting, I mean, of course, fans have done some stuff, but I thought the game was still getting official support.
Mm-hmm.
So I was surprised to see it land up in this category and not best ongoing support, which, I mean, I'll be honest, that game definitely deserves recognition for that, considering the fact that there are still expeditions coming out for the game that are 100% free. And I mean, the game's been out for years, and content still being added into that game again for free, and it's just like, okay, when are you going to stop, guys? Like, we get it, we know you messed up at launch, but you've atoned for your crimes. Like, you don't need to do this anymore. So I kind of feel like in that sense, No Man's Sky got robbed in best ongoing games, because a lot of stuff still going in there that is definitely pretty good. Like, I haven't had time to get into some of the newer stuff, but I've heard that from what I've seen, it's just been more good stuff added.
Yeah.
Also,
Agreed.
can Helldivers... Oh, sorry.
No, I was just saying I agree.
I was going to say also, can Helldivers even be considered best ongoing when the game just came out this year? Like, that seems kind of odd. Like, you think of a game that came out, say, at least a year before.
Right.
But the game came out this February, so I don't know how that would be considered best ongoing game.
Probably just because of the fact that it still continues to get new content. Because it came out in February, it's still getting regular new content.
Okay.
At least that would be my guess, based on that. So. But yeah. All right. That's all I have for that topic. Do you have anything else?
No, sir.